certainly they're always going to be, your first point of contact, but we're here to help if you're having problems with vendors that, are under our award, and certainly willing and do it every day to partner with your campus units to make sure that you're getting the support that you need. So spoke kind of quick there and at a high level, but you can see our awards at the IPEC.org website, which is iphec.org. And then also, most of them are linked on the business and finance website as well for each of the purchasing units. That's really all I had today. Thanks for dropping that in the chat, Danielle.
And thank you, everyone. We actually are ending this before our allotted time, so hopefully the rest of the meeting will progress that way, so you guys can get some time back. As always, feel free to reach out with any questions. All of our departments do have department emails, and that are monitored 24/7. So we're here to help. We're here to solve problems and solve your purchasing challenges. So just don't hesitate to reach out to your purchasing units. We are all working together to make sure the university has all the goods and services it needs. And we're always open to feedback and recommendations there. So thank you for your time. Back to you, Ginger.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Casey. And next up, we will hear from UAFR with year-end reminders. Anne, would you like to kick things off, or Regina?
I believe Regina is.
Yep. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for allowing University Accounting and Financial Reporting to meet with you all today to go over some helpful tips for our year-end closing. My name is Regina Harden. I've been with the university over 5 years now. My primary responsibility is dealing with my UI Financial and the year-end letter. So I'm going to actually have my colleagues actually introduce themselves, starting with Anne.
Thank you, Regina. Yes, I'm Anne Larimore. I have been with UAFR for over 10 years now. And today I'm going to be speaking about fact sheets and self-supporting funds and just some year-end tips. So I'll turn it over now to Aaron Rund.
Hello, I'm Aaron Rund. I've been with UAFR for about 18 years, and I will have some reminders for the state funds. I'll pass it to David then.
And I'm David Anderson. I've also been with UAFR over 10 years, and I'm going to be talking about payroll accounting, especially some things that are going to be coming up through year end. And I'll pass it back so we can get started.
I apologize. Can everybody see my screen okay? Or am I not sharing the right screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Good.
Let's see here. I apologize. Okay. So our agenda for today is, again, going over that year-end webpage and also our year-end document that we work on. We'll also be talking about the year-end fact sheet webpage, also giving you some fun type reminders, and then David will finish it up with payroll and labor redistributions. The first slide here is I just wanted to give you the link to our year-end procedure webpage, which you will find a wealth of information about our year-end closing for fiscal 25 to 26. Specifically on that page, you will find the year-end closing document. That is a document that we actually collaborate with several units on, which carries the policy, the procedures for helping you to close our fiscal 25 smoothly and also the opening of 26. But it lays out the critical deadlines, disposition of funds, and just your responsibility all the way around. Some tips I do want to provide, or critical dates for our year-end closing, is one, we cannot stress enough how important it is to actually post your journal vouchers and your finance feeder files early. This is so that you will allow time for corrections. And also, if your transactions are required to go through an approval queue, I don't know if everybody knows, but UFAR does not is not responsible for all approval queues. So there is other departments like SPA that does your reviews too. So we really want to encourage everybody to post your transactions earlier so that you make sure they meet the deadline. So with the year-end closing, period 12, which is July 1st through July 11th at 5 p.m., everyone has the ability to post to both our fiscal 25 and 26 funds, or I'm sorry, fiscal 25 year and fiscal 26. So during this time, we do ask that you double check your transaction dates to make sure you are properly posting to the fiscal year you need. We do also want you to know that we do provide preliminary statements that will be available on July 7th that will show you transactions that have posted through July 5th, so that if you do need to make any corrections, you certainly have time to do it. And then ultimately, our period 12 closing statements will be available on July 14th. Here is a slide and actually the link to our year-end webinars. We actually had one this morning, so thank you for anybody who attended that. We do have another one scheduled for June 3rd. Again, we do request that you do review that year-end letter before attending, because really that is a time for you to also ask questions to the experts also. And here, I just wanted to give you a screenshot of showing you our business and finance, accounting and budgeting webpage, the one specific to the year-end closing. As you see here in the middle, it has that year-end closing document that explains all the details. Over here to the right, I always like to point out that the past year opening and closing documents are available. So if you ever have a question about what was done in a previous year, you can. Also, the training for that year-end webinar is available here with the link. And also you will notice that there is information about or links to the fact sheet and labor distribution, which my colleagues will talk about later. So next I'm going to turn this over to Anne for fact sheets.
Thank you, Regina. So as you all can see on this webpage, this is our year-end fact sheet webpage. You are all probably aware, but every single self-supporting fund and health service plan fund are required. They all must submit a fact sheet during year end. The fact sheet is a tool for your department to submit to us and report to us any kind of accruals, deferrals, or inventory for resale on those self-supporting or health service plan funds. So this year end, the financial managers on those funds will receive an email around 8 a.m. on July 1st saying fact sheets are open and ready for you all to submit, and they are due by 5 p.m. on July 16th. So you can see that there under the critical dates. This webpage is a wealth of resources. So you can see there is an overview section that just talks about what fact sheets are. We have all our critical dates there. Over to the right, we have job aids on how to complete a fact sheet. There's an example of a completed fact sheet, as well as reference tools that go over each tab of the fact sheet Excel attachment and step-by-step of what we're expecting in each of those fields. And then down below on this webpage, you can't see it in the screenshot, we do have our FY25 fact sheet Excel attachment already available. So you can go ahead, go to this webpage, download the fact sheet Excel attachment to either your homepage or your H drive somewhere on your computer and start tracking those accruals, deferrals, or inventory for resale. And some of those you may already know. For example, your prepaid expenses or your unearned revenue. You may have received revenue this month related to an event occurring in FY26 in July or August that you know you need to track and defer as unearned revenue. So I encourage you to go out to this webpage and read through it. Down further on the right of this webpage, and on actually the next tab of this PowerPoint, we do have listed our beginner and advanced fact sheet webinar. We are going to have it again this year in the last week of June or so. So on June 24th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. is our beginner webinar. This webinar provides an introductory overview of fact sheets. So we go through the application and we briefly touch on those accruals, deferrals, and inventory for resale. So this webinar is really helpful for those that are new to fact sheets and you're going to be responsible for the first time to submit one, or if you just want a refresher on the basics with fact sheets. And then on June 26th from 2 to 3:30, we have that advanced webinar. And that webinar is going to be more in-depth review. We're going to go through each of the tabs in detail and go over examples and what we're expecting and the various nuances surrounding the fact sheets. If you are new to fact sheets and you're going to be responsible for submitting them this year, I encourage you to sign up for both. So both the beginner course and the advanced course. And then on the next slide, I wanted to point out some additional tips related to self-supporting funds. So you can see that first bullet point, it is a link to our self-supporting webpage, as well as the screenshot there. And I just wanted to point this out. We have several of these for various fund types, but on the business and finance webpage, we have these dedicated pages for the fund types. And the self-supporting webpage has a lot of wonderful information. It has, you know, the information on how to identify your self-supporting fund, how they operate, what kind of transactions are allowed on them, how do you find your fund balance or your cash balance. So if you ever have a question on a self-supporting, I cannot speak today, excuse me, self-supporting fund, I encourage you to go to that webpage. That second bullet point there, that 22.4 inventory for resale, I just wanted to give a quick plug for this policy. This is a new policy that replaced two previous policies. So within section 22. So it replaced the assessing inventory and conducting the physical inventory count policies. It basically combined them, updated them to provide newer and correct information as well as good business practices. So if you are responsible for inventory for resale, I encourage you to go out and read the new section 22.4, especially before year end with your inventory for resale count. And then that last bullet point, I just wanted to encourage you all to send us in any unreported non-monetary exchange entries. This year end, the deadline is July 3rd. So non-monetary exchanges occur whenever a university unit receives a good or service from an external entity in exchange for providing a good or service to that external entity. So there's no cash or cash equivalents being exchanged. It's something like you give event tickets to this external entity and in return they advertise for that event. So if you are aware of any of those non-monetary exchanges occurring, I encourage you to get those submitted to us following that webpage there. And then on the next slide, I have a couple additional tips for year end. So the last day to terminate a fund or program code for this year end is June 13th. If you have any funds or program codes where the activity is ended, I encourage you to submit to UAFR a request to terminate those funds or program codes. It's helpful. It helps in preventing those misclassified transactions. You have less CFOPs you need to reconcile each month. And depending on the fund type, if it's, you know, one of those self-supporting funds or health service plan funds, it would result in less fact sheets for you to complete. So all around good things to terminate those activities that have already ended. And then finally, make sure if you are doing any kind of funding transfer that they are handled via the appropriate channels at year end. I know at year end, many of you will be doing fund balance reviews and cleaning up your funds. If you're making fund transfers, just make sure they're handled appropriately. So for example, if you're performing a funds transfer between two 4M gift funds, make sure the transfer is allowable per donor intent. Also, for state and institutional funds like your ICR funds, use the proper budget transfer approval queue process to move funding between those program codes on those fund types. So instead of doing a JV where you're transferring funding between program codes using an expense account, which is inappropriate, follow those budget transfer approval processes to move budget. And then as Regina said, keep in mind that there might be approval queues that these JVs or transfers might post to. So now I'm going to turn it over to Erin to speak a little bit more with some year-end tips on state funds.
Thank you, Ann. Please use the correct state fund code in July and August. Both 1025 and 1026 will be open then. To ensure that the proper fund code is used, reconcile your state fund activity often during those months. Some reminders: 1025 state fund goods and services, which were received or contracted for on or before June 30th. 1026 for goods and services which were received or contracted for on or after July 1st. Once August closes, the 1025 state fund will be terminated. No further corrections or adjustments involving that fund will be allowed. I'll pass it on to David now.
Hey everyone, we've got a couple things going on the payroll side this year. First off, there are some different accrual pay events this year. Last year it was the biweekly 14 and biweekly 15. Biweekly 14-day periods don't translate evenly into 365-day years, so sometimes the numbers shift due to that timing. This year, biweekly 13 is going to be a full accrual because it's June 8th through June 21st for service dates. It's paid in July. Biweekly 998 is going to push all of that expense back into June. MN7 and biweekly 14 are split. So you're going to see a portion of those that they're going to post in July, so period 1 of next year, and the accrual is going to put in a negative in July and charge it in June. For all jobs except 9/12 positions, fiscal year 26 state fund should be on their job record as of July 1st. That way, when this is happening, the June portion will be using the fiscal year 25 state fund. The July portion will be using the fiscal year 26 state fund. 9/12 positions, which I'm going to talk about more on the next slide, move to the 26 state fund as of June 16th, 2025 instead. That's because they're accrued slightly differently. And on this next slide, we can see a little more about those 9/12 positions. They all have E-class codes of AA, AB, BC, or BD. If the E-class code is something other than that, it's not a 9/12 position. People are getting paid for the academic year, August 16th through May 15th. But the 9/12 position means that that pay is spread out through MN8. So the June, July, August payments, those service dates have already been completed in fiscal year 25. We just make the fiscal year 26 state fund effective as of June 16th, so the accrual becomes a little easier when we process that later. And when we do process it, it's processed outside the payroll system due to timing. MN7, you're going to be using a July posting date for those, just because the July is going to be accrued entirely on the fiscal year 26 state fund when we do go to do that. And this way we're not crossing fiscal year information weird. Again, most jobs are going to be updated in the system through the mass change process. As of 6/15/2025, you should be seeing that. Positions update a little later. That's going to be 6/27/2025. Some positions may not automatically update though, so HR would need to process manual job distribution changes in those cases. Next slide. So the other thing that we have to talk about is the posting of payroll July 7th to July 11th. This is the end of period 12. So both fiscal year 25 and 26 will be open. For the MN7 calc and biweekly 14 calc, they're back-to-back days, which happened last year also. There's an adjustment calc Thursday on July 10th. That Thursday, there's the 5 p.m. deadline to post labor redistributions in fiscal year 25. I didn't update that date. The 5 p.m. deadline to post labor redistributions in fiscal year 25. It's the Thursday because the payroll redistributions take an overnight process, and that Thursday is the last overnight we have. Labor redistributions processed after 5 p.m. Monday, July 7th, unfortunately will not show up in Banner until Friday. They're still going to be posting that Thursday night. It's just whenever we have a main pay calc, so MN7, BW14, those are the only things that post overnight those days. So the labor redistributions are just going to be showing up as disposition 60. Essentially, they've been processed. The user's done everything that they need to do with them. They're just waiting on the overnight process to run so that they can show up in Banner. Also, 3011 is the payroll suspense fund. If you encounter that fund when processing labor redistributions, please do not redistribute those line items. Those rows indicate funds frozen, technically, on terminated funds that cannot be redistributed. Most of the time it's because there was another redistribution that already attempted to move something from a terminated fund, and the only way we can fix those issues is if we put the expense back on payroll suspense to zero that change out. For instance, like the fiscal year 24 state fund, as of September 1st, we can't move any of those anymore. And as Aaron was saying, the fiscal year 25 state fund, as of September 1st of this next year, it's not going to be able to be moved either. So if redistributions are attempted on terminated funds, payroll suspense comes into play. Next slide. And we do have a year-end deadlines for labor redistributions website. That goes over some more of this in detail. We also have a new labor redistributions detailed knowledge base. There is still the original guide for labor redistributions as to how to do them. This one has a little bit more information and also includes screenshots to see where some of those fields are that you need to use. And in general, I'd suggest with the labor redistributions, get them done as early as you can so you don't have to worry about that timing for the last week of period 12. And that's everything for me.
Again, thank you for allowing us to present to you today. Are there any questions in the chat for us? And as always, if you do have any questions, you can certainly go to the Who to Ask in the Business and Finance website. Thank you for allowing us to present to you today.
Thank you all for those important updates. So appreciate you guys being here today. And to keep the UAFR theme going, next we are going to hear from Danielle Stoner, also from UAFR, on a couple of GASB updates. Danielle?
Hi everyone, as Ginger said, I'm Danielle Stoner and I'm a senior financial accounting coordinator at UAFR. I have been here for about 5 years, and in my entire tenure, I have worked on these two GASB standards, GASB 87 and GASB 96. So I want to provide a couple of updates on these standards that will be effective in FY26. So on the next slide, this is just a quick overview of GASB 87 lease criteria. So to be considered a lease under GASB 87, an agreement has to meet all of these criteria. The maximum possible non-cancelable term of the agreement is greater than 1 year. The contract total meets the materiality thresholds. The agreement is an exchange or exchange-like transaction, so both parties are exchanging items of equal or approximately equal value. Ownership does not transfer, so if we're renting space, the space returns to the lessor at the end of the lease term. If we are renting equipment, that means the equipment goes back to the vendor at the end of the lease term. And the contract conveys control of the right to use another entity's non-financial asset. Just a note about the term mutual termination for convenience clause with less than 1 year's notice makes the lease short term. This is a lot of information on one slide that we do not expect you to know or memorize, but this does play into the update. So on the next slide, for GASB 96 SPIDA classification criteria. So this is subscription-based IT arrangements, typically software subscriptions. It could be software hosting from a vendor. In order to be considered a SPIDA, an agreement has to meet all of these criteria. So these are very similar to the lease criteria I just presented. So maximum possible non-cancelable term of the agreement is greater than 1 year. The contract total has to meet the materiality thresholds. The agreement is an exchange or exchange-like transaction. In this case, access has to be granted for a defined term. So sometimes we have software purchases where we have indefinite forever access to a software platform, or we just have it until we cancel. Those would be outside the scope of GASB 96. So there has to be a defined term of access in the agreement. And the contract conveys control of the right to use another party's IT software. That could be on its own or with, equipment. Does not include maintenance services. And control is granted when the university can upload, enter, store information on the platform, or if our websites or applications are being hosted on a vendor server. We could be receiving customized features that were created by the vendor. So things like branded dashboards or custom reporting modules. And then the final criteria is that it's a payable agreement. So the university is paying a vendor to use their assets. We have the same caveat here with the mutual termination clause. So anything that we can terminate for convenience with less than 1 year's notice makes the agreement short term. So again, lots of information here. Big overview, not for you to memorize or know. This is just, again, playing into the FY26 updates. So on the next slide, what is changing for FY26? So the only thing that is changing is the materiality threshold. So currently, anything that falls below the materiality threshold, we do not report as GASB 87 or GASB 96 agreements, which is great news for you and us because there are less requirements and we don't have to bother you about payments with questions, that sort of thing. So right now for leases, our materiality threshold is $5,000 or greater. So we only report agreements that meet all of the lease criteria and are $5,000 or greater. And for SPIDA agreements, we only report those that meet all of the SPIDA criteria and the materiality threshold of $25,000 or greater. So if it meets all of the other criteria, but it is below that materiality threshold, then we do not have to report it as GASB 87 or GASB 96. For leases and SPIDA, those are pretty low amounts. And after a few years of implementing and managing these populations, we have increased the materiality threshold on both leases and SPIDAs, which again is great for you and us because less reporting requirements. It's a lot easier on all sides. So as of 7/1/2025 and forward, leases have to meet a materiality threshold of $50,000 or greater to be reported as a GASB 87 lease. And SPIDAs have to meet a threshold of $100,000 or greater to be reported as a GASB 96 SPIDA. So a lot of those copier leases, even though they meet the other criteria, they're, greater than a year, we're controlling the equipment, no mutual termination clause, we're paying an equal amount to what we're receiving. Since they will likely be below the $50,000 threshold, they will once again be considered short-term rentals like they used to. So, next slide. A few reminders. This is going to change the account code for payments on these agreements. So if all of the other criteria are met, but the materiality is now the exception, GASB 87 lease agreements, the payments for those are recorded to the 157 and 158 account range. So that's for real estate and equipment leases. If they meet all of the other criteria, say they're greater than a year, exchange or exchange-like transaction, we have control of the space or equipment, but they fall below that materiality threshold in FY26 forward, they would now be recorded to a rental account code. So you would choose something in the 143 account range for real estate, land, equipment, whatever is the most appropriate account description. And for GASB 96 SPIDAs, those payments are recorded to account code 153809. So again, if in FY26 you have an agreement that meets all of the other criteria, it's greater than a year, it's an exchange-like transaction, we have control of the software, but it falls below that new materiality threshold, then you would put it to a general software account code in the 153800 to 153808 account range. And the account code descriptions in the account code search tool will show this update as of 7/1/2025. They have been updated on the back end. They will just publish out to all of you in FY26. So next slide. So just some reminders. If you are choosing a GASB 87 lease account code, which would be the 157-158 range, or a GASB 96 SPIDA account code, which is 153809, on a contract or requisition request, then you should be marking yes to the question, there is a leasing component or software subscription in this contract that is more than 12 months, including renewal options. If you are marking that no, then you should not be selecting a GASB 87 account code or a GASB 96 account code. Okay, so if you are choosing a 157, 158, or 153809 as your account code in a contract or requisition request, you need to select yes on that question, which is a required question. And the reason you need to select yes is because it routes to our group in UAFR who evaluate these agreements. So like I said, you guys don't have to know all of the criteria. That's for us to evaluate. And we can look at the terms of the agreement and determine whether or not it's a GASB 87 lease, a GASB 96 SPIDA, if the account code is correct. And if it's not correct, we can send it back to you to correct, which is really helpful for us because the payments will be going into the right account. We won't have to ask you a lot of questions, and we won't have to bother you to move the payments down the line. So it's kind of getting ahead of some additional steps. Another reminder is that P-card transactions are extremely unlikely to fall under GASB 96 SPIDA criteria for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, P-card transactions are short-term, not always, but a lot of them are a year or less. But the majority of them fall below the materiality threshold now at $25,000, but certainly will with the $100,000 materiality threshold in FY26. So I have only once in 3 to 4 years seen a P-card transaction that falls under GASB 96. Unfortunately, there are lots of P-card transactions that are recorded to account code 153809 erroneously. And we have to move those transactions out every single month. We move thousands per year that should not be in that account. So if you feel that when you're processing a P card transaction, that it really does belong in 153809, please reach out to me directly. I can review the terms of whatever it is that you're charging and tell you if that is appropriate or not. And if not appropriate, I can give you another account code to use. So next slide. So that was a lot of information in a short period of time. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. And I always tell everyone, this is my area of expertise. I am happy to help anyone who has questions about certain agreements, what account code to use. Is this a lease, a rental, a software subscription, a SPIDA? Anything that I can do to help you, I'm happy to do it. You can just reach out to me directly. Aside from, the last 2 weeks in July, I'm very available. So let me help you if you need some additional clarification on anything. And that is all I have.
Let's see, Danielle, is there? Oh, yes, you will. There was one question in the chat, and we will be including the PowerPoints. Right, Bernadette, in. Oh,
Yes, that's right.
okay. Great. Lots of good information, Danielle, lots of good news with those thresholds increasing. So thank you for sharing that. And we are running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is a good thing because we have a lot on the agenda for the next hour. So we are going to take a 5-minute break. And let's see, it's 1:50, so we'll start again at 1:55. Okay, welcome back, everyone. And I know that I saw Evan. Evan, are you still with us? Yes.
I'm still here.
So, okay, so Evan, you do have a little extra time if you need it. And we are fortunate to have Evan Simpson join us this afternoon to talk a little bit about Fab Plus. And some of you may know what Fab Plus is. Some of you may be using it, and others will not have heard of it or be using it at all. So Evan is here to talk to us a little bit about that. Evan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ginger. Thanks for having me this afternoon and giving me the opportunity to talk about Fab Plus. I'm Evan Simpson, as Ginger said. I'm the Associate Director of Business and Finance with the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation here at Urbana-Champaign. So let's get into it. I'll give you a little overview of Fab Plus. First of all, if you haven't heard of it, what is Fab Plus? So the OVCRI, our Research Application Development Group, developed Fab Plus to work in tandem with Fab Web to enable the tracking and management of items below the Fab Web fixed asset threshold of $2,500. And so it's the asset management application. You can track both fixed assets that are above the threshold and anything that you choose to track that falls below. Our office mainly uses this for computers and laptops, things that have storable information. So why Fab Plus? So our office needed, when they raised the threshold and things started falling off of inventory, we quickly realized that we still needed to retain some mechanism to track items, especially ones with storable memory like computers, laptops, tablets, and what have you. So we needed a mechanism to track these while still maintaining property accounting expectations. University Property of Accounting policy on the BusFin website says, all property, regardless of funding source, is the responsibility of the unit head. All employees are responsible for the prudent use, care, and safeguard of system property, regardless of its value. And so we took that to mean that even if it's fallen off of fixed asset inventory, we're still responsible for tracking it. And so why not just kind of come up with an application that we can track both with? And one example of like a need is under our office, we have the research integrity. And sometimes he's got cases that he needs to look into and he has to like obtain computers and kind of take them over while he's doing an investigation. And we needed a way to track and follow up with these since computers are something that would fall under that purview. So Fab Web versus Fab Plus. So Fab Web, when you get into the system, it's color coded. All the orange FW items are things that are actually out in Fab Web. They have your standard P tag that you're used to. Whatever description you have in Banner and Fab Web will show up here. It'll pull in the purchase date, how much it costs, and the 6-digit location code. When you're actually in the application and you hover over this location code, it'll pop up with that friendly explanation. And then Fab Plus items are all the things that you've added in that are under that $2,500 threshold. So they're coded in blue, they're FP, and you can give those whatever name you want to. We strongly encourage you to not use the P tag number if it was something that was already in there beforehand and it was pulled in. So like for our office, we mainly just track computers. And so we sync with what our IT group names our computers. So like we're in the Swanland Administration Building, we're the OVCRI. So they name our computers Swan-VCR and then a 4-digit number. Something else that we have added in is, you'll see we have added in categories, and these can be applied to both Fab Web items as well as Fab Plus items, and that allows for easier searchability and filtering. And we also included keywords, so you can have one category for item, and then as many keywords as you would like. And that just helps with, again, reporting, filtering. If I need to look and see quickly all the laptops that have been purchased within a certain time frame, I can do that. There's a search parameters bar here that will expand out and has multiple filters that you can search by. So it's pretty robust. Another facet that it's a perk, if you will, that I'll touch on a little bit later. But while I'm on the screen, I'll show it to you. You can create labels. So I can basically create a, like if a current P tag gets damaged, I can print a replacement label. By the same sign, whatever I decide to call my Fab Plus items, I can also print a label for that. And it'll have the same format as a P tag. It'll still have a scannable barcode, but it'll say University of Illinois, and it'll have whatever item ID you choose to give it. So on this main splash page, there's an easy way to create an item, and that's a Fab Plus item. You can import a lot of items. So like if I order, 20 laptops and I want to import them all at the same time, there's a fillable CSV that I can fill out and then upload back into the system, and it'll create 20 new items. If I wanted to, like say I wanted to add the category, if I wanted to change the category for these existing items, I could do an import update sheet, or I could quickly do a mass change of category, or maybe I want to change the keyword or something. Maybe I want to update the location of just the Fab Plus items. I can do that in a batch, so I don't have to do it one by one. If I was querying just by Fab Web items, because again, these are things that are in Fab Web, they're in Banner, they can only be changed really in Fab Web by someone that has unit representative authority from the security application. However, if I would just query by only the Fab Web items, another button would pop up, and it'd be called Banner Update Sheet. I could click that and make any changes that I wanted to those items, and then give it to somebody that had that unit representative access to Fab Web, and they could upload it into Fab Web, and then those changes would reflect in Fab Plus the next day. So let me show you some of the nuts and bolts for those of you who would like to take a deep dive. If you've got access in Banner to look at what inventory items look like, you'll notice that the ones that are either below the $2,500 threshold that used to be in there, or things that you have disposed of, there's a system status. And if it's D, that means disposed. And so what Fab Plus does is it goes out and looks for all of the items in your org that have been disposed, and then it looks at why. So in Banner, there's something called a disposal method. And what Fab Plus does every single night is it goes out and it looks for all the items that have a status of D for disposed, and either a disposal method of I, which was state threshold removal, or J, which was state threshold removal because of the cost threshold. And if it falls in there, then Fab Plus will pull that into its system for you to see. So that's kind of where those things come from. So as I mentioned, kind of Fab Plus syncs with Banner every single night. So any changes that you would make in Banner and Fab Web, those are reflected the next day in Fab Plus. So we don't allow any changes to Fab Web items to happen in Fab Plus. We have that, we keep the internal controls secure by only letting those things be changed by people with unit representative access in Fab Web, which is pretty cool. So I've already talked about some of these perks, but here's some more. One of the additional attributes that you can add to any item, both Fab Web or Fab Plus, is an attribute called replacement cycle. And so, for example, like all of our laptops, we give a replacement cycle of 4, which means that we assume in about 4 years, we're going to need to replace it. And what that allows us to do is to run reports. And so like I could go into Fab Plus right now and run a report and see how many laptops we expect to replace, like in FY27 or FY28. And it'll show me So that helps us both budget how much we're going to need to spend on laptops each year, but it also allows us to kind of strategically spread out those replacements so we're not doing like all 40 of our laptops in one fiscal year. I talked a little bit about the batch capability. So you can add things into Fab Plus. You can add your Fab Plus items in batches. You can do up to 100 at a time. You can make updates to those items in batch as well. And another key thing is you can just do disposals in batch. So one thing that I want to highlight for people that start using this is that Fab Plus, when you start, it's going to pull in everything that used to be in FabWeb because the threshold started at 500. So anything that was in when it was 500, but then might have fallen off because of the threshold increase to 1,000 and then 2,500. All of those things in between are going to get pulled into Fab Plus, and Fab Plus doesn't know to get rid of those until you tell it. But luckily you can go in and do a batch disposal, so you can get rid of anything that might have gone to surplus since then, because Fab Plus has been around for actually about 4 years already. Or if there are things that you don't want to track anymore, like for example, our department decided we don't really want to track furniture anymore. So we went in and we got rid of like some office machines. Like we had like a $700 fax machine or a shredder that we got rid of. You know, there was a Veridesk that was right at $500. We took that off. So anything that you don't want to have show up on your list that you don't want to track that was already there, you can dispose of it. If it was because of surplus, you can mark that it was surplus, and it allows you to pop in your surplus disposal number that you get from FabWeb. Or like for our purposes, like for the furniture, we created a category called departmental indifference. And so if you had some like TV monitors or things of that nature that you don't really need to track necessarily, you can take those off of your Fab Plus list and maybe cite something like departmental indifference. I mentioned label printing before. You can print labels for Fab Plus items or FabWeb items. It's compatible with a couple different, we can actually make it work with any Avery label, but there are 2 that are out there right now. And also our IT group, Swanland IT, handled all of our COVID testing sites back during that COVID time. And so we have a couple dozen of these Zebra label printers, and we've also made Fab Plus compatible with those. And so if anyone is interested, we have several of these Zebra label printers. We've got extra labels, extra toner. If anyone would like to use those, please reach out to me and I can give you those and then make your instance compatible with those labels. Another whole thing that we have is loan form management. It's like a whole tab unto itself. So for our office, we require every laptop to have a loan form on file. In these days post-COVID, where almost everyone has a laptop and it can just get up and walk off campus almost every day, we feel that that's something that's important. And so we give you the ability, every item, whether it's FabWeb or Fab Plus, you can check a box on it and denote whether or not it should have a loan form. And then in our loan form management tab, you can report on, you can kind of filter on your list and see which things do and don't require a form. And then you can also see which ones do and don't have one active. So like for each item, you can upload a PDF and you can say that it's going to be active for maybe 1 year, 2 years, whatever you're comfortable with. We usually do ours for 2 years and have it coincide with biennial inventory. So to get access to Fab Plus, since it's an internal application that was developed by OVCRI, we require a MOU to be completed between whatever college is requesting access and OVCRI. And there's no charge to use Fab Plus. We share this freely. We just ask for the MOU mainly so that it sets expectations on your side. Right now, it's basically just myself that would be kind of the help desk. And if all of campus decided to use this tomorrow, I just don't have the capability to act as a help desk for the entire campus. So we do ask to kind of designate a primary contact for your college. And we ask that communications between myself and your college kind of be streamlined to that one contact. And then we also ask that you don't ask for a lot of additions that might only benefit yourself. So we just want to have that understanding in place before we give you access to that system. So if once that MOU is signed and it's available on the BusFin website, it's a completely online MOU, then I will add your college. And then once you've been added, that primary contact just has to go in and assign one equipment manager for every unit that you would like to have it be used by. And so I want to touch on, this is spreading really nicely across campus. So far we have 245 active units across campus. You'll see at Urbana-Champaign, we've got 19 colleges, Chicago is 11, Springfield and the system both have 2. MAU stands for Major Administrative Unit. The 2 big hitters at Urbana-Champaign are OVCRI and Liberal Arts and Sciences. Chicago is all of their colleges of medicine, which encompasses 52 units. Springfield is their liberal arts and social sciences. And the system has 8 units under the executive vice president and vice president of academic affairs. So once you get access, here's kind of the levels of what you would see. So the admin, if you're an admin of a unit, you'll have access to this My Units tab. And then we make it hierarchical. So we'll give you access to a college. And then under the college, you've got the school. And then under the school, you've got all your units. And so what we set up initially is access to a college. And then it's your responsibility to assign admins and viewers and equipment managers at the unit levels. And so you'll see like this is NE, this is Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. We've got 27 potential departments. We've got 12 that are active. That means we have 12 departments that have at least one equipment manager. And so here's a little bit more about the different roles. So there's the admin role at the college level, and they can decide what categories and keywords that you can choose from that are assignable. They are the ones that are expected to add and delete users and assign various roles throughout the entire college. They can also set up the default systems item syntax. And what that means, it's a fancy word for item ID. And so the default that it rolls in under is a Z, the FY that it was added in, and then just an alphanumeric sequence. So like A00001. So you can use that, and then anything that's added into Fab Plus will just have that default syntax, or you can program it to be something else, or you can check a box and allow units to just overwrite, so they can type in whatever they want for their item ID. Just be very careful that you can only have one unique item ID per item. And then at the school and unit level, you can have admins, and they only have the ability to manage roles and that item ID syntax. And then equipment managers are only at the unit level. And so you have to manage that for every unit that you want to have access to. They have full edit access to all the data, so they can change things. If you want people to be able to see it but not change it, we've got the viewer role, which is pretty self-explanatory. And so thanks to a project from the Strategic Project Management Office via Operational Excellence at the Urbana-Champaign campus, we were able to develop some resources, and we got Fab Plus added to the BusFin website. So you'll see it's available under the applications. And then there's an applications tab up here that you can click on and get to the online MOU and some of the additional resources. Also, if you would like to just type in a URL, Fab Plus is at go.illinois.edu/FabPlus. Here's the resources page I was talking about. There's the application, and it has a lot of the information that I shared today about what is Fab Plus and a couple of the how-tos. Here's the MOU link, and I would ask please that only people that can authorize the MOU at a college level complete it. And then the training is just a couple of the high level, like here's how to add an item, here's how to do a batch import and stuff like that. So that was Fab Plus in a nutshell. I'm happy to take any questions. I would also be happy to do a demo for any groups that are interested. Just contact ovcri-businessoffice@illinois.edu. If I got a lot of interest, I would be willing to set up like a mass demo for anyone interested. But yeah, I'll turn it over for questions.
And Evan, there were a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
And actually a really good comment about Fab Plus and you and your team as well. Do you want to look at those, or would you like me to read the questions to you?
I'm just looking at them now. So let me see.
Okay. Okay.
So it looks like did I cover access to Fab Plus and how to get access? I feel like I did. You go through the MOU process, and then you can contact this email, and that will happen. Is Fab Plus subject to the same prohibited role combinations as Fab Web? No, but if you would like to adhere to that within your college, you're more than welcome to. For example, like I myself do not have Fab Web access, but I am the one that helps look at things in Fab Plus. So that's kind of a college level decision. Some of our units have decided to have people that work with their inventory also work with Fab Plus. For some people, we've got a lot of smaller admin units in our college, and so we manage inventory for a lot of smaller units. And so I kind of have some oversight in Fab Plus, but then the units themselves can help manage that too. So we kind of left it open in general for sharing.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, but Evan, I'm guessing you're going to get some after this meeting.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
thank
And
you.
Yep, you're very welcome. I'm happy to talk any more about Fab Plus whenever anyone shows interest.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing with us today, and thanks for taking the time to be here. We definitely appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And so next up, we are going to hear from Stacy Balmas, the Business and Finance Policy Office, with some policy updates.
Thank you, Ginger. So if we can just go to the next slide. So these are just some recent updates, 15.4.4 and 15.4.5 on use of motor pool vehicles. Those have been updated. So 15.4.4, we just wanted to clarify student driver eligibility, when they can drive cars, who can rent them, etc. And then on determine when to use commercially insured motor pool vehicles, we just removed some language to hopefully better clarify what activities are not covered by the state insurance plan. So hopefully that's a little clearer. 16.1.1 probably doesn't interest a lot of folks on this call, but just for the sake of transparency, I wanted to share it. The 16.6.1 UIUC sponsored program administration has been decommissioned. There is still one up for Chicago as 16.6.2, but the information for Urbana has been transitioned to their website. And then we removed payables. I'm not going to take credit for their work. They removed the requirement to obtain approval as a cash handling unit if you wanted to become a merchant unit. So then next slide, please. So as you know, hopefully most of you know, we're in the process of doing what we very ambitiously started out calling the annual review, but we're in year 3 now. Of just taking a look at all of the policies in the policy manual, all 22 of them. Not necessarily with a look to update anything because something has changed, but just taking a fresh set of eyes on them, making sure everything looks good. We've completed quite a few right now. We're working on policy 7 on purchasing and policy 11 on gifts and endowments. Once those are both done, we'll be moving on to the policies you see on the screen: insurance, payments, investments, banking and internal loans, taxes, merchant card services, and self-supporting funds. Those will probably go through, I know I say early 2026 on here, but that will probably go through the calendar year. Just 2 little caveats on these. On payments, we were going to do that at the same time as purchasing, but with Jim Martini retiring, we figured it would be cruel to Melissa Plotner to have her take on that ship and run through her policy. So we've kind of put the brakes on that a little bit, and probably in, you know, in a good few months after the close of the fiscal year, we'll probably, you know, reach back out to her. So that'll probably be later 2026. And then self-supporting funds, I don't know if a lot of you have looked at that recently. So you'll see there are, I think, 7 policies, 22, 1 through 7. And then there's just a lot of links and they have little titles on them, but it's not clear, is this a policy? Is it not? It doesn't have a number. And so UAFR is very kindly looking through all of those and are probably going to look at them, maybe rewrite them, fix some clarity, see if any updates need to be made. And then we'll add numbers to those. And they're working on those as they get a chance. So we're just going to kind of slowly amass all of them until all of those sections are done, unless there's something that needs to be changed immediately because legislation or maybe something in there is wrong. I'm not aware of that, of anything in there being wrong that needs to be changed. But if there's an emergent change, we'll make that obviously sooner rather than later. But for the rest, we'll just kind of wait till we've got everything so we're not sort of sending you an update. Here's 22.8, here's 22.9, here's 22.10. So that's just kind of giving you an idea. If you looking at the ones on deck, if you work with any of these policies a lot and you think, wow, you know, it would be really great if they did this, or if they took this out, or if they reworded this, or whatever, please do send those. The last slide you'll see on here is our office email account. We want to hear from you, like what's working, what's not, what could be better, what, you know, what's fantastic as it is, and please don't touch it. Please do let us know if you work with these policies a lot, you have any thoughts. We definitely want to hear from you guys too, to make sure that they're workable for everybody. So we want to go to the next slide. So just a couple of updates. Let me add, it's not letting me on. I'm going to add a link to the open comment because we had 1 policy that just closed on open comment. It's still up there, so if you wanted to take a look at it and sneak a comment in, I'm not going to tell anybody. But we have one that closes today at 5 on requesting reimbursement for domestic or international travel and business, and it's just updated to reflect hopefully a more accurate difference. So you know, this is what domestic per diem is, this is what international per diem is. That closes at 5, and then a brand new policy that technically closed on Tuesday, but again, if you want to take a look at it and give some thoughts to us, that's fine. It's on compliance with Health and Human Services salary rate limitation. And the goal is to ensure that the system's in compliance with their new salary rate limitation, with a note that this is going to apply kind of retroactively to any awards, competing renewals, non-competing continuations, and supplements issued on or after October 1st of last calendar year, which is how it came to us from the government. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room on that, but just wanted to be sure you were aware that this will go back to look at anything from October 1st moving forward, but it'll go effective as of when we publish it. I think right now we have 1 comment on that. So if your job does anything with Health and Human Services, and with Chicago, I'm assuming most of you do, I would encourage you to take a look at that. And so I added the link to the chat. And if we want to go to the next slide, that's it. So you should be getting these slides. So if you have any thoughts on any of the upcoming annual review policies or questions about any of the policies that we've updated, let us know. And then just generally, if you have thoughts about any policies, if you feel we're not doing a good job of letting you know when updates are being made, please let us know. We're trying really hard to get out there. If you are aware of maybe your department or your college has meetings and you'd like us to come and speak about policies there, we're happy to do that. We want to get in front of anybody that will have us. And yeah, just anything generally about policies, please let us know. We're very open to that. And that's it. So if no one has any questions, I'll wish everyone a happy 3-day weekend.
Thanks, Stacy. And I don't see anything in the chat right now, so we will move along and hear from Brian Padden on export controls and visual compliance screenings. Brian?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, and you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Brian. I'm with OVCR, Export Control Director here at UIC, and I appreciate this opportunity. I realize that all of you out there, 190, I'm so glad we're not in person because I'd be far more intimidated. All of you out there, I realize don't directly necessarily work with export controls directly. I'm used to working and talking about this with PIs and faculty and so forth, but I do think there's overlap, and I think it's important to put the word out there in a very, very broad sense and talk a little bit about visual compliance, which is the restricted party screening that we have system-wide. So I've got to use this excuse. I've only been here for 2 months, so I'm new. I can still use that excuse. After hearing you all talk, I'm impressed and confused. I counted like 30 acronyms I don't know. So I'm still learning. This is pretty intimidating as far as how many different units and aspects of the university system there are. Quick introduction, I've come from 27, 8 years of service in the federal government, where the last 22 were enforcing criminal investigations of export controls. So if there's one thing I know a lot about, it is, and I think that's why I was lucky to get the position to do this role here at UIC. You may know my colleague Bob Roach from UIUC, who's the export control guy. He knows more than me, so you might have worked with him. But so let me get into it, and please ask any questions, put them in the chat, what have you. Again, very big, broad overview. So what are export controls? They are basically, the way I look at it is they're transactional. They're probably more than what you think they are, and we'll get into that. But there's a set of laws that are confusing, complicated, that restrict the transfer, the export, the release of certain items and technologies and information. And what's interesting to know is the reason for the controls. They are varied, but they're mostly foreign policy, national security of the United States, and originally came about in the 20th century to protect exactly what a university like ours does, which is create cool things and advanced technologies that are important. But let's keep it realistic, right? Because this critical research and cutting edge work and teaching that's done in the university system, there's only a small proportion of it that I'm concerned about, that our office is concerned about, where there could be potential points where there's potential violations or concerns or risks. And again, I'm only here to help mitigate the risks from a compliance perspective when it comes to these confusing and constantly changing set of laws, and to be a resource to you all and everyone throughout the system to the best that we can. And collectively, I would just add is that there's a due diligence requirement under these laws in general that require organizations and universities to adhere to these laws. And of course, the PIs and the labs, the individual units are kind of the front line. They're the ones seeing these things. I'm not seeing them day in and day out. So we're trying to rely on this very disparate, fragmented decentralized situation to try to identify potential concerns and so forth. So by and large, you probably all know this, the vast majority of research conducted here is excluded from any export controls because of these exclusions of educational, publicly available, and the fundamental research exclusion. For example, UIC is a fundamental research institution, and we adhere to that. It's the most important mission, of course, is about that collaborative, international, awesome research that is done. And we don't want to have the, for example, classified research or ITAR, which is State Department military projects here at UIC anyways. So kind of sticking to that. However, I'm here to just quickly pass along that there are various points where that fundamental research exclusion does not apply. And that's when it comes to the shipment of goods, the exchange of software, encryption, transactions that are identified as having some kind of restrictions on them from funding sources, some research conducted outside the US. This is very difficult to talk about in a broad sense because it's so confusing, but it could go on for 20 minutes in each area. But the universe of research is a good thing to look at here and think about it, that in general in the world of research that we're all directly or indirectly involved in is you have these inputs and outputs, and are the inputs controlled technologies, and or are the outcomes of the publications restricted in some way that would cause it to have restrictions versus the publicly available and fundamental research basis or what most of the work done is. And of course, there is the policy on classified and restricted research I mentioned. Not important necessarily here, other than to just know from the UIC perspective that, again, we don't accept it in general, but by exception, allow it when working with departments and units with sponsored programs to work through that, to allow some of that research to come through with restrictions, awareness, and kind of monitoring of it, and agreements that are made. And why should we care overall as a university about export controls? It's a priority of the U.S. government. I just came from it for 23 years at the Department of Commerce. And I can tell you, of all the federal agencies that have been kind of attacked currently, the Commerce and its export controls are not being attacked. They're being enhanced. And the basis, again, protecting national security, the great research we do while balancing the great work that's being done. We have policies. There's a big set of laws and regulations that are confusing as heck, including something some of you might be involved in, might not think about, are filing requirements when you go to export something and fill out export control documentation for customs. There's something called an EEI filing that some of you might know about. There's specific requirements of what needs to be reported accurately in there. And of course, there are substantial penalties. They're actually amazingly high in the extreme for violations of these laws and regulations. Export Control Act, 20 years imprisonment max. And civil sanctions, of course, that are pretty high, and you may have seen in the news of universities and certainly major U.S. exporters suffering or paying these fines. Denial of export privileges, and probably most importantly is the reputational concerns. You don't want to be the university. You don't want our university to be in the news. In this publication that our agency put together, Don't Let This Happen to You, that highlights and tracks violations as kind of a don't let this happen to you, a scare tactic in a way. But don't be too scared, because I can tell you from working in this area, no one's going to prison and going to get arrested. My former self isn't going to show up and arrest anyone unless it's a very conspiratorial, knowing and willful types of violations when it comes to export controls. It's a very high bar and not very likely. What's most likely to happen in our university system is a mistake, an oversight, not knowing about the compliance requirements, which is part of the reason I'm here. Also, as you all know, where do we get money by and large? Federal research funding is big. And it's a key source for funding for our projects. And through these agreements and through the contracts that we have, researchers get, sponsor projects works to work through. They have requirements. NASA has requirements about who can work on it and work on certain projects and so forth. And also companies have requirements related to export controls through things like NDAs. So overall, it's worth having export compliance in a university and investing it system-wide. Of course, there are challenges in the academic environment. You all know this probably more than me. I'm listening to your presentations and I'm totally confused of what's going on, as you would probably be, and someone at the university would be, about export controls, because there's multiple regulatory authorities. They're confusing. They're constantly changing. We of course have a fragmented system here, and the research collaborations, which are awesome. The travel that's going on all over the world is often informal, evolving. Computers, of course, have opened a whole world of how of information can be transferred and exchanged. And we have a constant rotation in the university environment of students and so forth. One great example of it that you might not all think about, but that I do, some universities, I think of Purdue as an example, has a centralized shipping process where every export that leaves from the university goes through one central point to be reviewed by someone like me for export compliance. Whereas at UIC, UIS, UIUC, from my understanding, there's people all over the university shipping using FedEx and UPS accounts. They're all over the place, which is good in a way, but also you could see, if you don't know how to properly fill out paperwork for an export to be accurate and factual, there might be issues there. So wanted to quickly go through 3 scenarios that I think are most important in this environment. Physical shipments, something called a deemed export, which you may or may not have heard of, and interacting, of course, with sanctioned countries and parties, which is going to lead to my quick discussion about visual compliance. It all comes down to license requirements, who's getting something, where it's going, what the use is going to be, who the end user is, and what the product or technology is that collectively make it potentially subject to export restrictions and having a license that's required. So physical exports, of course, we're talking about items that can be physically sent, software that could be taken on a laptop, software that could be sent to someone in an email or given access online, technology that could include sending a drawing. I use some of these cases as examples. I've actually worked on cases just like this, where someone is sending a drawing illegally through email, and it constitutes an export. I'm sure you've heard this before. Taking your university laptop overseas would constitute a physical export, along with materials that might be for research or to do your job. So awareness to that, I think, is important. Here's an example from a university that you may or may not have seen. Princeton, of course, pretty darn well known, has to pay a settlement, only $54,000 for them, probably not much, but it's in part because they disclosed. And like I said, in this environment, it's probably going to be a mistake like they made through auditing. They saw, oh no, we accidentally sent animal pathogens to various research institutions on 37 occasions. And they were controlled for biological and weapons reasons. You could see why that's a concern and a potential oversight at a university like that. Other examples, quickly think of, you can go through a student emailing engineering data at night, traveling to Iran with a laptop that has software on it. You get the idea, right? These things could have been prevented. These are actual cases I've worked on as an investigator, with training or faculty awareness or a reporting mechanism that's out there. Now, for those who don't know what a deemed export is, in summary, it is when someone who is a foreign national gains access to certain technology, software code, very complicated determination of when this happens, but it's constituted as an actual export when they are given access to it. And of course, clarifying what I mean by a U.S. person versus a non-U.S. person. Basically, a U.S. citizen, of course, a lawful permanent resident, green card holder, those are U.S. persons. And under these laws, non-U.S. persons would be those who aren't that, and that could potentially, in a university setting, have a deemed export requirement. And here, going through a quick example of a deemed export, you could read it. Professional and engineer would like to have a student, an Indian national, participate. They got to have access to drawings, to these mirrors to participate. Those mirrors, arguably, or the technology behind them could be restricted in such that it would require a license for the Indian national in the U.S. to see and use that technology while working on the project. So you could see that as an example, I hope. Okay, next section would be prohibited sanctioned countries and parties. This is probably what you all mostly know about. We all know the main 5 or so main sanctioned countries by the U.S. government: Iran, Libya, Sudan, Russia, most recently Cuba, and of course North Korea. But there are many other lists that are restricted by the different federal agencies. Here are examples of some of them. Obviously, I don't have time to go into them all, but it gives you an idea that there are many, and by different agencies ranging from DoD to Commerce and Treasury State, and others, Health and Human Services, for example. And here are some quick examples of prohibited party case examples in a university setting. Attending a conference where money is exchanged and paid for someone on the entity list could be a violation. Business school hosting listed parties at a university who are exposed to items subject to the EAR. Even at our own university, UIC had to get a license a couple years ago to teach nursing at an Iranian grad students via Zoom. So those are just examples there. Okay, now I want to get to the other main part of this, which is visual compliance. You might have heard out there, or there might be users out in the audience here that have used Descartes visual compliance. It's the restricted party screening. It's intended to help users do the screening of all those lists I just mentioned. This is a system-wide tool with currently over 300 users. And the idea is to more quickly, easily, and more powerfully screen using fuzzy logic and so forth. Here's the actual screen that's used. Our office, the office at UIUC, as well, provides training on this periodically. We're trying to update it here at UIC right now because of some issues. We want this detection to occur at the department level and work its way to us when necessary. You could see here are all the lists, so you could see all of the ones that we currently use. They're from all over, from the FBI to Homeland Security to the different offices, even at the state level, for IG offices and so on. Here's what it is. I've pretty much said that already. I showed you the other lists already. We just want to make sure this review occurs so that we are compliant, of course. Here's an example of one that I just did recently for someone with this name. It comes up. My job to go through and see if this is really a hit, if this person and this company together really constitutes a potential concern. All right, got to wrap it up.
Brian, I wanted to interrupt real quick because we have one more presentation still to go through. But go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm right at about time right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I can give you these slides too. When should we be conducting them? Who should be doing the screening? And who we are screening over. You could see all this here. You could look at that all later. And this is was my conclusion to all of you to please help us in this area by being familiar with export control regulations. If you're involved in purchasing, procurement, if there's any equipment that's export controlled, to be aware of that. before exporting university-owned property, determine if there's any issues or filings that need to occur, and so on and so forth. The tracking of travelers to countries, helping us with that, just being aware in general. So I'll wrap it up with that. Our goal here at Export Control is to be that resource and provide the training as needed, work on those plans, and so forth. So I'll end with that. I'll get you the slides. Please reach out if you need to, here to increase awareness and so forth. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Such an important topic. So sincerely appreciate you being here with us today and providing the information. So thank you very
there's
much.
a lot of it. I tried to do my best in a
Yes.
short time. But
Yes.
reach out anytime.
We were definitely pressed for time, but thank you. And now for our final presentation of the day, I will turn things over to Joe Barnes for an update on AI. Joe?
Hello, everyone. So I've got another really short, small topic to review, artificial intelligence. I've given this presentation or variations of this presentation quite a bit. I've got a deck I can go through, but this is such a large topic that if anyone has any specific topic areas, questions, things that are on their mind when they hear the words artificial intelligence, if you just start dropping it into the chat, I'll pay attention to that and sort of tailor this conversation to that area. But if not, I'll sort of talk to some of the basics, and then if we have time at the end, happy to talk about it. Really want to turn this more into a conversation than just me talking to you about artificial intelligence. So I'm Joe Barnes. I'm the Chief Digital Risk Officer for the University of Illinois System. And I'll just start going through the deck here. So artificial intelligence is a huge topic. There's a lot of vocabulary related to it. A lot of times when we say artificial intelligence, what people really mean today, top of mind, what they're thinking about is what is really referred to as generative AI or Gen AI. The cool kids call it Gen AI. So think about it that way. It is a subset of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence in and of itself has been a field of study for decades, right? The 50s, the 1950s, 1960s. We've been studying AI. We're doing a lot of amazing things with artificial intelligence from a research perspective across our organizations. Generative AI really became a thing a few years ago when a product called ChatGPT came out from a company or an organization called OpenAI. And essentially the idea that they've now got technology that you can put a prompt to it, you can talk to it, you can type to it, and it basically creates new content. It was ChatGPT, the version was 3.5. Fast forward 3 years now, and there's new versions of ChatGPT. Every technology organization has some flavor of generative AI in their use. Microsoft Copilot would be one that you would be familiar with. You're seeing all sorts of different versions, all sorts of different capabilities. It can create text, it can create languages, programming languages, images, videos, music, the human voice, you name it, it can create it. It's very hard to keep track of everything that's going on, and it also makes it very hard to talk specifically about any one of those products, in sort of a general way. So it is out there. It's also what makes it fun and confusing is it's a big marketing buzz as well. So everyone is coming to market with something that has either AI or generative AI in it. We see those words used interchangeably, but I have this pencil over here that has embedded AI in it. If you want to buy it, I'm selling it for $25 a pencil. So just, you can let me know, but that's the kind of thing we're seeing. So it's very confusing. It's hard to keep track of. I see there's a question there on are we allowed to use AI tools on university laptops and networks? Which systems or applications are permitted and which ones are restricted? That's a great question. I'll dive into that in a little bit from that end. To give you an interesting thing about AI, what's new about it, what's different about it compared to other technologies. Often we hear comparisons to, AI is just like the internet when it took off, or AI is just like social media when we took off, which is true. It did take off. AI has a much larger adoption. This chart is a little bit old, but in order for us, ChatGPT to reach 1 million users, it took them 5 days to do that, as opposed to 75 days for Instagram to do that in 2010. So what makes this technology more interesting is how quickly it's being adopted, how quickly it's being used, and some of the guide rails and some of the use cases and how we would use them in a sort of safe, responsible way. Some of that is happening not in a controlled environment, but it's happening across the world in those use cases. And so it does make that challenging. So I'm going to spend a minute and talk about the question there about AI tools and laptops. So it really is on a case by case basis. So if you think about it, we have all of these AI tools that are out there. There's a website out there called there's an AI for that, and it hosts a bunch of different AIs that are available to be used. I don't recommend using any of them necessarily, but to give you an idea, 3 years ago there were 9,000 AIs available in that website. Today there's over 35,000. And so when we think about all these different products that are out there and the use of generative AI, each product is developed in its own way, in its own use cases. Each product from AI will handle your data differently. So it's very hard for an organization to stay on top of and evaluate all of these AIs. So what we've done from a University of Illinois system perspective, and each of the universities are taking somewhat similar approaches, is we look at the technologies that we're using and we try to determine those larger technologies that we have in place, such as Microsoft, such as Zoom, Box, some of these existing technology platforms that we have that are starting to integrate AI. And we basically run them through a privacy and cybersecurity risk evaluation. And we try to understand, okay, if I put data into this tool, what is it doing with it, right? Is the data protected? Is it being shared with others? What does that look like? One of the things that some AI does, some generative AI can do, and you have to really, look at each product and understand the terms, is they may say, okay, if you ask it a question, say, I want you to put together a beautiful picture of a red bird on the moon singing a song. That information that you put into the tool may be used by the company to then train that AI to do more work. And so when we think about taking data and maybe putting sensitive or personal information into a tool, whether we're talking about health information or social security numbers or something like that, we have to understand that if that data is staying in our control or being shared elsewhere. And obviously if it's being shared elsewhere, we can't use the AI from that perspective. So those are the things that we sort of evaluate. So things like Microsoft Copilot, that's a use and available in Chicago, has gone through that review process and has been approved for higher sensitivity of data. That same product, Microsoft Copilot, is going through a similar review in Urbana and will be released. Zoom AI. Zoom has an AI companion, and those have been reviewed. But the point of it is we're sort of going through a list of what applications can be reviewed, or what applications do we have? How do we review them? What does it take to review them? And then we're sort of going through that list. I will share later the slide deck that I have. I will make sure I get it to you here. And there is a series of links in one of the slides that show you all the different various resources. One of the resources we have for Chicago and Urbana and Springfield is a page that shows you what products have been through the review process. So to answer your question, are AI tools allowed? Yes, they are. In general, you can use AI tools, and if you're putting in data that is considered public, right, information that's available on our websites, that's publicly available, that won't cause any harm, you can utilize AI tools such as Microsoft, such as ChatGPT. It just becomes when you start to say, I want to use those tools with more sensitive data, whether we're talking about internal, sensitive, or high-risk data, those have to be approved through our process, which is really no different than any other product, right? If you think about Box, our Box license, that went through a process to be reviewed, and that's what allows us to store different levels of data. Is there a restricted list? There isn't a restricted list necessarily. There is, and I'm trying to think of the name. There was I'll have to find out and said there was an AI, what was it, Deep something. It was a Chinese developed AI and it made the news a few months ago, and it made the news because it was able to do calculations much faster than other versions of AI. It was one of those stories where it was like, here's China, jumping past the United States from an AI perspective. And if you looked at the code, and I'll find this and I will send this to the group, Stacey, but if you looked at the code in that product, written in that code was language that would take your data and send it to a Chinese organization that had affiliation with the government's intelligence agency. So that's not a new thing to AI. I mean, there's all sorts of technologies out there that have sort of those things in them, but that would be something that I would say is on the restricted list. But we don't necessarily have a holistic restricted list of applications. So I'm gonna go through AI. It's still uncertain. 3 years ago, generative AI came out, and it was a mix of will it kill us? Will it save us? Odds are it's somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to talk about recommendations necessarily. These are some links. Again, I'll send you the slide deck here, but there's tens of thousands of AIs. People are making them all day long. Like any product, if they're not coming from a large tech company, or reputable organization, I would be very cautious of those AI applications. Some of those AI applications are standalone, like ChatGPT. Some of them are integrated now, such as Microsoft 365 Copilot. It might just be called Microsoft Copilot by now, from that perspective. The point of this is, and this is the resources I was talking about. The point of generative AI is it's going to be a long journey. Some of the things that we learn, we'll learn as a society, and some of the things that we go through will make sense to do. Some of the things we'll want to be a little more cautious on from that perspective. There is activities going around at each of the universities. Each of the universities have groups that are focused in on AI and sort of trying to address how do we use AI in research? How do we use AI on the academic side of the house? How do we use AI on the administrative side of the house? Those links are here on this site. Are there any guidelines, baselines for departments on assessing accuracy of AI information? The tools are only as good. Yeah, DeepSeek. Thank you very much for that. The DeepSeek was the Chinese AI that I would avoid using. Guidelines for assessing accuracy for AI information. I'm not aware of any guidelines that we have right now, but I think that is a good point. Is if you are thinking about using AI, and the way I would think about this is think about the use cases that you have, think about the work that you do, and and how AI might be able to enhance that. We have found that most of the AI that actually does something of value right now are things that are sort of repetitive in task, sort of the back office, sort of administrative side of the house, using artificial intelligence to maybe draft a communication, or to think about a marketing plan, or to think about a process. If you've got a pretty manual process that's got known data inputs and outputs, think about what you do, and then try to apply AI from that perspective. And that comment from David there is, you almost have to test it. You have to take whatever you're doing, do it manually, or how you've been doing it, see the results, and then take the AI and try to replicate it and see if you get those same results. I know there's AI used around taking large data sets and things that you would do in Excel, and from those perspectives that may take time to do, and then you could just magically throw it in AI, and it would come out. And you really have to, as you take these products, test them, look for the accuracy before you trust them, and sort of take the human out of the loop from some degree. I know Ginger came on, which means the hook's coming out, which means it's time. Or the giant gong. Do you have the hook or the giant gong? Which one do you do?
Neither.
So I realize that's an accelerated version of AI. I will make sure that you guys have this slide deck. I think the slide that I have up here is the most helpful one we have. This is probably the most comprehensive list of resources. It certainly isn't completely comprehensive. If you find something else that's not on this list, you can always send it my way. We try to update this. But that's the brief AI overview.
And Joe, I was just looking to see, I don't think there's anything else in the chat. So definitely interesting to say the least. So thank you, Joe, for being with us and jumping on this call to give that quick update.
Yep, and if anytime, if the group has specific questions, whether it's an agenda, whether we want to talk about it here or those are various, like I said, it's so broad that you can always send it my way, digitalrisk@uillinois.edu. And if I can't answer it, I will make sure that somebody in the organization can get you that answer.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
And before we sign off today, since Brian Payman is still on the call, Brian, there was one more question in the chat regarding visual compliance. And the question was, let's see, if we get a hit on the list that seems concerning, do we contact Brian? Brian, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, for UIC and I guess for the system overall, it would be for me for sure. I'd be glad to look at a hit closer. One thing I didn't get to talk about real quick is there's non-export related hits as well that relate more to those other lists that I tried to show. So it could be because someone's wanted by the FBI or previously GSA restricted them for contract fraud. We're struggling with how to figure out how to best handle who would handle those things and so forth. But for starters,
Okay.
I can always be reached with any kind of hit to go through it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Brian. And just a quick thank you to all of our presenters today. There was a wealth of information shared, and a big thank you to all the participants for coming today. We appreciate your time and hope that you found the information useful. And as always, please feel free to reach out to University Outreach with any questions. We are here to help. And a final reminder that this is our last meeting for this academic year. So please be on the lookout for an email detailing all the meeting dates for the next academic year. Wish you all a wonderful summer and look forward to seeing you in September. Thanks again and have a good rest of your day, everyone.